7/20/26 at 24:07 a.m. When a dream so vivid and terrifying it felt like a warning from beyond drove me to the waterfall overlooked deep in the rainforest preserve outside my home. And there, surrounded by the thunderous roar of cascading water, plunging into the mist-shrouded pool below, ancient ferns dripping with moisture that caught the moonlight like diamonds, and the dense canopy overhead blocking out all but fragments of starlight. Jesus appeared before me with tears streaming down his face and spoke words that shattered everything I thought I understood about the next 7 days. Jonathan, they've been marked. Every single person who will see this message has been marked by my Father before the foundation of the world for this exact moment. And what I'm about to show you about the next 7 days will determine whether they step into their destiny or miss the greatest opportunity of their lives. Not everyone who sees this message is meant to see it. Some will scroll past, some will ignore it. But you've been marked. I need to tell you something before we go any further. If you're watching this right now, it's not an accident. The algorithm didn't bring you here. Your curiosity didn't bring you here. God himself orchestrated this divine appointment. And I'm about to share something with you that I've never shared publicly before. Something so urgent, so time-sensitive that I actually hesitated to record this because I knew the moment I did, everything would change. But first, I need you to do something for me. I need you to leave your prayer requests in the comments below. I don't care how impossible your situation seems. I don't care how long you've been waiting. I don't care if you've prayed 1,000 times and heard nothing but silence. Leave it in the comments, because what Jesus showed me in that rainforest at nearly 300 in the morning has everything to do with why some prayers get answered in the next 7 days and others don't. And I promise you by the end of this message, you'll understand why. And if you're serious about your faith, if you're truly hungry for more of God and not just religious entertainment, hit that subscribe button right now. This channel is only for true believers. It's only for people who are willing to hear hard truths, who are willing to be challenged, who are willing to let Jesus disrupt their comfortable Christianity. Because what I'm about to share will do exactly that. Now, some of you know me as the actor who portrays Jesus in The Chosen. That role has been the greatest honor of my life, but it's also been the greatest responsibility. When you spend years studying the words of Christ, when you meditate on his teachings day after day, when you try to embody his love and his truth in front of cameras and crews and millions of viewers, something happens to you. You become sensitized. You become attuned to his voice in ways you never expected. And sometimes he speaks to you in ways that terrify you because of the weight of what he's asking you to carry. This is one of those times. Let me take you back to that night, to that moment, to that place. I hadn't planned to go to the waterfall. I'd been in bed exhausted from a long day of filming when I fell into a sleep that wasn't really sleep. You know what I'm talking about. That state where you're not quite dreaming but not quite awake, where the veil between the physical and spiritual realm becomes thin as gossamer. And in that state I saw faces, thousands of them, millions of them, faces of people I'd never met. People from every nation and tribe and tongue. And they were all looking at something just beyond my field of vision. Something that was coming, something that was almost here. And then I heard a voice, his voice, say just one word, go. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The clock read 2:33 a.m. I knew exactly where I needed to go. There's a place about 20 minutes from my house, a rainforest preserve that most people don't know about with a waterfall that drops nearly 80 feet into a pool, surrounded by rocks older than human civilization. I'd been there before to pray, to think, to escape the noise of the world. But I'd never been there at this hour, never in the middle of the night. I threw on clothes and drove through empty streets, the darkness pressing against my windows like something alive. When I reached the trailhead, I grabbed my flashlight and started walking. The path was treacherous in the dark, roots reaching up to trip me, rocks slick with moss, the sounds of the nocturnal rainforest creating a symphony of chirps and calls and rustlings that would have unnerved me if I hadn't been so focused on getting to that overlook. The temperature had dropped to maybe 55 degrees, unusual for this time of year, and I could see my breath in the beam of my flashlight. The air was thick with moisture, that particular heaviness that comes from being deep in a rainforest, where the canopy holds in the humidity like a greenhouse. Every breath I took tasted of earth and vegetation, and something ancient, something primordial. It took me 15 minutes to reach the overlook, and when I did, I turned off my flashlight. The moon was 3.4 full, hanging in a gap in the canopy like a spotlight from heaven. And its light turned the waterfall into a cascade of liquid silver. The roar of the water was deafening. Not painfully loud, but loud enough that it filled every space in my mind, drowning out every thought, every worry, every distraction. The mist rising from the pool below caught the moonlight and created an ethereal fog that swirled around the rocks and ferns like something out of a dream. I stood there on the wooden platform that serves as the overlook, my hands gripping the railing, and I prayed, "Jesus, I'm here. What do you want to show me?" And that's when everything changed. The temperature dropped suddenly. I mean suddenly, like someone had opened a freezer door. My breath came out in thick clouds. The sounds of the rainforest went completely silent. Not gradually, instantly, as if someone had hit a mute button on creation itself. Even the waterfall seemed to quiet, though I could still see it cascading down. And then he was there. I didn't see him appear. He was just suddenly there, standing on the other side of the platform. His form somehow more solid than the trees around him, more real than the rocks beneath my feet. He was wearing simple robes, and his face. Oh, his face. I've tried to portray that face for years on screen. But nothing could have prepared me for the reality of it. The love in his eyes was so intense it was almost painful to look at. But there was something else there too. Something I'd never seen in all my studies, all my prayers, all my meditations. Tears. He was weeping, not sobbing, not wailing, but tears were streaming down his face in the moonlight. And when he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "Jonathan," he said, and the sound of my name from his lips made my knees weak. "Do you know why I brought you here to this place at this hour?" I couldn't speak. I could barely breathe. I just shook my head. He stepped closer, and I could smell something like myrrh and honey, something that doesn't exist in our world, but somehow should. "I brought you here because what I'm about to show you needs to be witnessed, in a place where my Father's creation still speaks clearly, where the noise of human civilization can't drown out the truth, where the power and majesty of what we created can remind you that we are not small, we are not distant, and we are not silent." He gestured to the waterfall, and as he did, the moonlight seemed to intensify, turning the cascade into something that looked like flowing light rather than water. "In 7 days," he said, "something is going to shift in the spiritual realm. A window is going to open that has been closed for a season, and everyone who sees the message you're going to share, everyone who has been marked by my Father, is going to have an opportunity that won't come again for a long time." What kind of opportunity? I managed to whisper. He turned to look at me fully, and the intensity of his gaze made me take a step back. The opportunity to step into the calling they've been running from. The opportunity to receive the breakthrough they've been begging for. The opportunity to see me move in their lives in ways they've only read about in Scripture. He paused, and another tear rolled down his cheek. But most of them won't take it. Most of them will miss it completely. Do you know why? I shook my head again. Because they don't understand what it means to be marked. He raised his hand, and suddenly the air between us shimmered like heat waves on asphalt, and I saw a vision. I saw a massive crowd of people, and above each person's head, a mark not visible to human eyes but visible in the spiritual realm. Some marks glowed with brilliant light. Others were dim, barely visible. And as I watched, I saw angels moving through the crowd, stopping at certain people, whispering in their ears, orchestrating circumstances, arranging divine appointments. "Before you were born," Jesus said, his voice echoing strangely in the silent rainforest. "My Father looked down through time and saw this moment. He saw you watching this message. He saw every struggle you've been through, every prayer you've prayed, every tear you've cried, and he marked you. He set you apart for such a time as this." The vision shifted, and I saw a calendar. The dates were highlighted. The next 7 days, starting from February 2nd, 2026. And over those 7 days, I saw supernatural activity like I'd never witnessed. I saw angels being dispatched. I saw demonic resistance being broken. I saw chains falling off people. I saw doors opening that had been locked for years. I saw healing, deliverance, provision, restoration, all happening in rapid succession, like a divine domino effect. But here's what breaks my heart. Jesus said, and his voice cracked with emotion, "Here's what makes me weep. Most of the people who have been marked for this moment won't recognize it. They'll be too busy, too distracted, too comfortable in their lukewarm faith. They'll see your message and think, that's nice, and then go right back to scrolling. They'll hear my voice calling them to something more, and mistake it for their own thoughts. They'll feel the stirring in their spirit and dismiss it as emotion." He stepped closer to me, so close I could have reached out and touched him. "I need you to tell them, Jonathan, I need you to warn them. The next 7 days are not ordinary days. They've been marked on heaven's calendar. And everyone who has been brought to this message has been marked as well. But marking isn't enough. They have to respond. They have to act. They have to step out in faith and obedience, or they'll miss what I'm about to do." "What are you about to do?" I asked, my voice barely audible over the returning sound of the waterfall. He smiled then, and it was like the sun breaking through storm clouds. "I'm about to answer prayers that people stopped praying because they lost hope. I'm about to open doors that people stopped knocking on because they got tired. I'm about to heal wounds that people accepted as permanent because they couldn't imagine me being that good." He turned back to the waterfall, and as he did, the water seemed to respond to his presence. The mist swirling in patterns that looked almost like words, almost like a language I couldn't quite read. "But there's a condition," he said, his voice taking on a tone of authority that made the very air vibrate. "They have to understand what they've been marked for. Not just blessing, not just breakthrough, not just answered prayer. They've been marked for assignment. They've been marked for purpose. They've been marked to be my hands and feet in a world that's about to get much darker." The vision came back, but this time it was different. This time, I saw the people with the glowing marks stepping into situations that looked impossible. I saw a woman walking into a hospital room where doctors had given up hope. And as she prayed, I saw the patient's body begin to heal. I saw a man standing in front of a business that was about to close. And as he declared God's promises, I saw the circumstances shift. I saw a teenager speaking to a friend who was contemplating suicide. And I saw demons flee at the authority in that teenager's voice. "This is what they've been marked for," Jesus said. "Not comfort, not ease, not a life where everything goes their way. They've been marked to be warriors, world changers, history makers, but they can't step into that calling if they don't recognize this moment for what it is." I was trembling now, overwhelmed by the weight of what he was showing me. "How do I make them understand?" I asked. "How do I help them see?" He turned back to me, and his eyes were fierce with love and determination. "You tell them the truth. You tell them that the next 7 days are a test. Not a test of their perfection, but a test of their willingness. Will they be obedient when I whisper instructions? Will they step out in faith when I open doors? Will they pray when I prompt them? Will they speak when I give them words? Will they give when I ask them to be generous? Will they forgive when I call them to release?" The wind suddenly picked up, rushing through the rainforest canopy with a sound like a mighty rushing river. And the mist from the waterfall swirled around us both. "And you tell them this," he continued, his voice rising above the wind. "If they miss this window, if they ignore this marking, if they scroll past this message and go back to their comfortable, lukewarm existence, they won't lose their salvation, but they will lose their opportunity. And some opportunities only come once in a lifetime." He reached out and placed his hand on my shoulder, and the touch sent what felt like electricity through my entire body. "Tomorrow night, come back here, same time. There's more I need to show you, more they need to understand. But for now, go and tell them what you've seen. Tell them they've been marked. Tell them the clock is ticking. Tell them the next 7 days will determine the next 7 years of their lives." And then, just as suddenly as he'd appeared, he was gone. The sounds of the rainforest came rushing back. The chirping, the rustling, the thunderous roar of the waterfall. The temperature returned to normal. The moonlight seemed ordinary again. But I was not the same. I stood there on that platform, gripping the railing, tears streaming down my own face now, knowing that I'd just been entrusted with a message that could change lives or that could be ignored. Listen to me. If you're still watching this, if you've made it this far, you're marked. You need to understand that this isn't motivational speaking. This isn't positive thinking. This isn't me trying to get views or subscribers. This is a prophetic word from the throne room of heaven delivered in a rainforest at 47 in the morning to someone who was terrified to share it because of how crazy it sounds. You've been marked for the next 7 days. And what you do with this message, what you do with this warning, what you do with this opportunity will echo into eternity. Tomorrow night, I'm going back to that waterfall. Jesus told me to return, and he's going to show me more. He's going to reveal deeper truths about what's coming and what you need to do to prepare. And I'm going to share every word of it with you. But right now, in this moment, I need you to do something. I need you to stop and pray. I need you to ask Jesus if this word is for you. I need you to ask him what he's marking you for. And I need you to leave your prayer request in the comments, because I believe with everything in me that the prayers left under this video in the next 7 days are going to be answered in supernatural ways. Don't ignore this. Don't scroll past. Don't dismiss this as just another YouTube video. You've been marked, and the next 7 days start now. It was February 3rd, 2026 at 30:15 a.m. when I found myself back on that same trail. My flashlight beam cutting through the darkness as I made my way to the waterfall overlook for the second night in a row. But this time, everything felt different. The rainforest seemed more alive, more aware, as if creation itself knew something significant was unfolding. The air was even colder than the night before. I checked the temperature before leaving my house, and it read 48 degrees, unseasonably cold for this region. My breath came out in thick plumes as I climbed over roots and navigated around moss-covered rocks. And with each step, I felt a growing sense of anticipation mixed with something I can only describe as holy fear. I hadn't slept after the first encounter. How could I? I'd spent the entire day in a daze replaying every word Jesus had spoken, every image he'd shown me, trying to process the weight of what I'd been asked to carry. I'd recorded the first part of this message, and already the comments were flooding in. Thousands of people sharing their prayer requests, their struggles, their desperate need for breakthrough. And as I read them, I kept hearing his words echoing in my mind. They've been marked. They've been marked. They've been marked. But I also kept hearing the warning. Most of them will miss it. That's what drove me back to the waterfall that second night. I needed to understand more. I needed to know how to help people recognize this moment. How to help them step into what God was doing. Because if what Jesus had shown me was true, if the next 7 days really were a divine window of opportunity, then I couldn't afford to be unclear. I couldn't afford to be vague. Lives were hanging in the balance. When I reached the overlook, I immediately noticed something different. The moon was in almost the exact same position as the night before. But the mist rising from the waterfall was thicker, denser, creating a wall of white vapor that obscured the pool below. The roar of the water seemed louder, more insistent, like it was trying to tell me something. And the smell, that earthy ancient smell of the rainforest, was mixed with something else now, something that reminded me of incense, of the temple, of sacred spaces. I set down my flashlight and gripped the railing of the platform, staring into the mist. Jesus, I said aloud, my voice barely carrying over the sound of the water. I'm here. I came back like you asked. Please show me more. Help me understand what these people need to know. The response was immediate. The temperature plummeted so fast that frost began forming on the railing under my hands. The sounds of the rainforest didn't just go silent. This time they reversed like someone was playing a recording backward. And the mist from the waterfall began to glow with an inner light, not bright like the sun, but soft and golden like candlelight filtering through alabaster. He stepped out of the mist, not from behind it, not around it, out of it, as if the mist itself had taken form and become flesh. And this time his appearance was different. He looked the same. The same face, the same robes, the same eyes full of impossible love. But there was an intensity to his presence that hadn't been there the night before. He looked like a king preparing for battle. He looked like a bridegroom waiting for his bride. He looked like a father about to do something drastic to save his children. "You came back," he said, and there was approval in his voice that made my heart swell. "You told me to." I replied, my voice shaking. He smiled, but it was a sad smile. "Many people hear my voice, Jonathan. Few obey it. That's the first thing I need you to understand about these next 7 days. That's the first thing everyone watching this needs to understand. Hearing is not enough. Recognition is not enough. Even belief is not enough. What I'm looking for. What separates those who will step into their marking from those who will miss it is obedience." He moved to the edge of the platform, looking down into the glowing mist, and gestured for me to join him. I did, my legs feeling weak, my whole body trembling from cold and awe and fear. "Look down there," he said, pointing into the mist. "Tell me what you see." I looked, squinting through the golden glow, trying to see the pool below. But instead of water, I saw something else. I saw people, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all standing in the mist, all looking up toward where we stood. And they were calling out, their voices somehow audible despite the roar of the waterfall. "Help me, Jesus. I need a miracle. Please, I can't do this anymore. Where are you? Why won't you answer?" The desperation in their voices broke something inside me. I felt tears streaming down my face as I listened to their cries. Their pleas, their raw and honest pain. These are the prayers I hear every second of every day. Jesus said, his own voice thick with emotion. "These are my children crying out for help, for hope, for breakthrough." And do you know what breaks my heart more than their suffering? I shook my head, unable to speak. It's that I've already answered most of these prayers. I've already dispatched angels. I've already moved circumstances. I've already opened doors, but they can't see it because they're looking in the wrong direction. He waved his hand, and the scene in the mist changed. Now I could see the same people, but from a different angle, and behind each one of them, I saw open doors, glowing obvious, impossible to miss open doors. But every single person had their back to their door. They were all facing the wrong way, staring at closed doors, pounding on locked doors, weeping over doors that were never meant to open. "This is the second thing you need to tell them," Jesus said, his voice taking on that tone of authority that made the air vibrate. The next 7 days are not about me finally deciding to answer their prayers. I've already decided. I decided before the foundation of the world. The next 7 days are about them finally turning around and seeing what I've already prepared. He turned to face me directly, and his eyes were blazing now, not with anger but with passionate intensity. "Do you understand what I'm saying? Do you understand how crucial this is?" "I think so," I stammered. "You're saying the breakthrough is already there, but people are missing it because they're focused on the wrong things." "Exactly." His voice rose above the waterfall, and the mist swirled in response to his words. "They're praying for me to open doors I've already opened. They're begging me to make a way when I've already made a way. They're asking me to move when I've already moved. And meanwhile, the enemy is doing everything in his power to keep them distracted, to keep them looking in the wrong direction, to keep them from turning around and seeing what's right behind them." The wind picked up suddenly, rushing through the rainforest canopy with such force that leaves and small branches began falling around us. But neither Jesus nor I moved. We stood there on that platform, surrounded by the chaos of wind and mist and falling debris, and he continued speaking. "In the next 7 days, I'm going to be speaking to everyone who's been marked. I'm going to be giving them specific instructions. Turn here. Look there. Call this person. Go to that place. Give this amount. Forgive that offense. Release this dream. Pick up that assignment. And the ones who obey, the ones who actually do what I tell them to do, even when it doesn't make sense, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it costs them something, those are the ones who are going to turn around and see their open doors." He paused, and the wind died down as suddenly as it had started. In the silence that followed, I could hear water dripping from the leaves above us, each drop hitting the platform with a sound like a ticking clock. "But the ones who hesitate," he continued, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "The ones who hear my voice but second guess it, who feel my prompting but rationalize it away, who sense my leading but decide to wait for a more convenient time. They're going to miss it. They're going to stay facing the wrong direction. And when these 7 days are over, when this window closes, they're going to wonder why nothing changed. I felt a surge of urgency rising in my chest. How do they know? I asked desperately. How do they know when it's your voice and not just their own thoughts? How do they know what to obey? Jesus smiled, and this time it was a smile of genuine warmth. That's the third thing you need to tell them. That's why I brought you back here tonight. He gestured to the waterfall, to the mist, to the ancient trees surrounding us. Do you know why I keep meeting you in places like this? In creation, in the wild places where human civilization hasn't tamed everything. I shook my head, because this is where my voice is clearest. This is where the noise of the world can't drown out the whisper of my spirit. Look around you, Jonathan. Really look. I did. I looked at the waterfall, still glowing with that golden light. I looked at the mist, swirling in patterns that seemed almost intentional. I looked at the trees, their branches reaching toward the sky like hands lifted in worship. I looked at the rocks, ancient and unmovable, bearing witness to countless years of God's faithfulness. And as I looked, I began to understand. Creation obeys me without question, Jesus said softly. The water falls because I designed it to fall. The trees grow because I commanded them to grow. The rocks stand firm because I placed them there. They don't second guess us. They don't rationalize. They don't wait for a more convenient time. They simply do what they were created to do. He turned back to me and his eyes were gentle. Now, that's what I'm asking of my marked ones in these next 7 days. Not perfection, not complete understanding, just simple obedience. When they feel that prompting in their spirit, that sudden thought to call someone, that unexpected urge to give something, that uncomfortable conviction to forgive someone, that strange leading to go somewhere, I need them to just do it. Like the waterfall, like the trees, like the rocks, just do what I'm asking without overthinking it. The mist began to shift again, and I saw another vision. This time, I saw specific scenarios playing out like scenes in a movie. I saw a woman sitting at her kitchen table drinking coffee, when suddenly she thought of an old friend she hadn't spoken to in years. In the vision, I watched 2 different outcomes. In the first, she dismissed the thought and went back to scrolling on her phone. In the second, she picked up her phone and sent a text message. And in that second scenario, I saw the ripple effects. The friend receiving the message at the exact moment she was contemplating ending her life. The conversation that followed, the healing that began, the destiny that was preserved. I saw a man driving to work when he felt a strong urge to take a different route. In one scenario, he ignored it and stayed on his usual path. In the other, he obeyed and ended up at a gas station, where he met someone who offered him the job opportunity he'd been praying for. I saw a teenager in her bedroom feeling prompted to apologize to her mother for something she'd said in anger. In one scenario, she let pride win and stayed silent. In the other, she walked downstairs and said 3 simple words, "I'm sorry, Mom." And I watched as years of relational walls began to crumble. These are the kinds of prompting I'm going to be giving in the next 7 days. Jesus said as the visions continued to unfold. They're not going to be dramatic. They're not going to be accompanied by thunder and lightning. They're going to be quiet, subtle, easy to dismiss, and that's exactly why most people will miss them. He waved his hand and the visions disappeared, replaced once again by the view of the waterfall in the mist. The enemy has convinced my people that my voice always comes with fanfare. That divine direction always feels supernatural. That obedience should always make sense before you do it. But that's not how I work. I speak in whispers so that only those who are truly listening will hear. I give instructions that seem small so that only those who are truly humble will obey. I ask for faith steps that feel risky so that only those who truly trust me will move. The temperature was rising now, the frost on the railing beginning to melt, and I realized that this encounter was coming to an end. But Jesus had more to say. "Jonathan, I need you to tell them something else, something hard, something that's going to offend the religious people, but set the hungry people free." I braced myself. "What is it?" His expression became stern, almost fierce. The next 7 days are not for everyone. They're only for the marked ones. And being marked doesn't mean being perfect. It doesn't mean having it all together. It doesn't mean never struggling or doubting or failing. Some of the most marked people are the ones the religious community has written off. Some of the most marked people are the ones who've made terrible mistakes. Some of the most marked people are the ones who feel the least qualified. He stepped closer to me, and I could feel the heat radiating from his presence, melting away the cold. I need you to tell the single mother who thinks she's disqualified because of her past, she's marked. Tell the businessman who's struggling with addiction, he's marked. Tell the teenager who's battling depression, she's marked. Tell the pastor who's ready to quit, he's marked. Tell the person who's made such a mess of their life. They can't imagine me still having a plan for them. They're marked. His voice was rising again, echoing off the rocks and trees. The marking isn't about their worthiness. It's about my choice. It's about my sovereignty. It's about my decision to use broken vessels to display my glory. And in the next 7 days, I'm going to be reaching out specifically to the ones who feel the most disqualified. Because those are the ones who will give me the most glory when I turn their lives around. I was weeping openly now, thinking of all the comments I'd read, all the broken people crying out for hope. How do I help them believe that? I asked through my tears. How do I help them see that they're really marked? Jesus reached out and placed both hands on my shoulders, and the touch sent warmth flooding through my entire body. You tell them to look for the signs. In the next 7 days, I'm going to be confirming their marking in tangible ways. They're going to see repeated numbers. They're going to hear specific songs at specific moments. They're going to have dreams that feel more real than waking life. They're going to encounter people who speak words they desperately needed to hear. They're going to experience coincidences that are too perfect to be coincidental. He paused, making sure I was capturing every word. And when they see these signs, they need to recognize them for what they are. My way of saying, yes, I see you. Yes, I hear you. Yes, you're marked. Yes, this is real. Now turn around and look at the door I've opened for you. The mist was beginning to thin now, the golden glow fading, and I knew our time was almost up. But I had one more question burning in my mind. Jesus, what happens if they miss it? What happens if they ignore the promptings? If they dismiss the signs? If they let these 7 days pass without responding? His face fell, and the sadness that washed over his features was almost unbearable to witness. Then they'll have to wait for the next window, and I can't tell you when that will be. Some windows open frequently, others open once in a lifetime. This particular window, this specific alignment of spiritual circumstances, I haven't opened it in years, and I may not open it again for years to come. He released my shoulders and stepped back toward the mist. That's why the urgency, Jonathan. That's why I'm weeping. That's why I need you to sound the alarm. Because I love them too much to let them miss this without warning them. I love them too much to let them stay comfortable in their complacency. I love them too much to let them keep facing the wrong direction when their breakthrough is right behind them. The mist was swirling around him now, beginning to obscure his form. Come back tomorrow night, same time. There's one more thing I need to show you. One more truth they need to understand before these 7 days begin in earnest. But for now, go and tell them what you've seen. Tell them to start listening for my voice. Tell them to start watching for the signs. Tell them to prepare their hearts for obedience. Even when it doesn't make sense, I will. I promised I'll tell them everything. He smiled one last time. And then he spoke words that I'll never forget. The ones who obey in the next 7 days will look back a year from now and recognize this as the moment everything changed. The moment their story shifted. The moment they stopped being victims and became victors. The moment they stopped begging for breakthrough and started walking in it. Tell them that, Jonathan. Tell them their future selves are begging them not to miss this. And then he was gone, dissolving into the mist like he'd never been there at all. But I knew he had been. The warmth still lingered on my shoulders where he touched me. The words still echoed in my mind. The vision still burned behind my eyes. I stood there for another 20 minutes, just processing, just praying, just letting the weight of it all settle into my bones. The sounds of the rainforest had returned, the chirping, the rustling, the endless roar of the waterfall. The temperature had normalized. The mist was just mist again. But I was not the same person who had walked up that trail. And if you're still watching this, if you've made it this far, you're not the same person who started this video. You've been marked. And now you know what that means. It means God has already answered your prayers. It means He's already opened doors. It means He's already made a way. But you have to turn around. You have to start looking in the right direction. You have to start listening for His voice and obeying what He tells you to do. Even when it seems small, even when it doesn't make sense, even when it costs you something. The next 7 days are not ordinary days. They're marked days, sacred days, days when heaven is paying attention to what you do with what you've been given. So, here's what I need you to do right now. I need you to get alone with God. I don't care if it's in your car, your bedroom, your bathroom, wherever you can find 5 minutes of silence. And I need you to ask Him one question. What do you want me to do in the next 7 days? And then I need you to listen. Really listen. Not for an audible voice necessarily, but for that quiet prompting in your spirit, that thought that seems to come from nowhere, that urge that doesn't quite make sense, that conviction that makes you uncomfortable. And when you hear it, when you feel it, when you sense it, obey it. Don't overthink it. Don't rationalize it away. Don't wait for confirmation. Just do it. Like the waterfall, like the trees, like the rocks. Simple obedience. That's the key to unlocking everything Jesus wants to do in your life in the next 7 days. Tomorrow night, I'm going back to that waterfall one more time, Jesus said. There's one more truth I need to understand, one more piece of this puzzle, and I'm going to share it with you as soon as I receive it. But don't wait for tomorrow's message to start responding. Start now. Start today. Start this moment. Leave your prayer request in the comments if you haven't already. Tell me what door you're believing God to open. Tell me what breakthrough you're desperate for. Because I believe those prayers are going to be answered in the next 7 days in ways that will leave you speechless. Now turn around and see what God has already prepared for you. It was February 4th, 2026 at 20:58 a.m. when I made the climb to the waterfall overlook for the 3rd consecutive night. But this time, I wasn't alone on the trail. I couldn't see them, but I could feel them. A presence that surrounded me as I walked, something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up and my spirit leap within me. The air itself felt charged, electric, like the moments before a lightning strike. And when I finally reached the platform overlooking the waterfall, I understood why. The sky above the canopy gap was no longer showing just moonlight. It was alive with stars so bright and numerous they looked like someone had thrown diamonds across black velvet. And they were pulsing, actually pulsing with light in a rhythm that matched my heartbeat. The temperature was the coldest yet. My phone read 42 growlers when I checked it at the trailhead, and my breath came out in thick clouds that hung in the air like ghosts. But it wasn't just cold. There was a weight to the atmosphere, a density that made every movement feel significant, every breath feel purposeful. The waterfall was thundering louder than I'd ever heard it, and the mist rising from below had taken on an almost crystalline quality in the starlight, each droplet catching and refracting light like a prism. I'd spent the entire previous day in a state of heightened awareness, watching for the signs Jesus had mentioned, listening for His voice in every quiet moment, and He'd been true to His word. 222, 333, 444 on clocks, receipts, license plates. I'd heard the same worship song 3 times in completely different locations. I'd received a text message from someone I hadn't spoken to in 5 years, saying words I'd prayed that morning that someone would speak over me. The confirmations were undeniable. But more than that, I'd been reading the comments on the previous videos. Thousands upon thousands of people sharing their stories, their prayers, their desperate need for breakthrough. And as I read them, I felt the weight of what Jesus had entrusted to me growing heavier. These weren't just random viewers. These were the marked ones. These were the people heaven had orchestrated to see these messages at this exact moment in history. And what I was about to share with them tonight would determine whether they stepped into their destiny or missed it entirely. I gripped the railing of the platform and looked out at the waterfall, now barely visible through the thick mist and the darkness. "Jesus," I called out, my voice strong despite my trembling body. "I'm here for the third night. I'm ready to receive whatever you need to show me. Please don't let me miss anything. Don't let me fail to communicate what these people need to hear." The response was immediate and overwhelming. The stars above suddenly blazed brighter, so bright I had to shield my eyes. The temperature didn't just drop. It felt like I'd been plunged into ice water, every nerve ending in my body screaming with cold. And the sound. Oh God, the sound. The waterfall's roar multiplied tenfold, becoming not just noise, but a voice, a chorus, a symphony of sound that seemed to be speaking words I couldn't quite understand, but felt in my bones. And then everything went silent, not gradually, not slowly. In an instant, every sound ceased. The waterfall was still falling. I could see it through the mist, but it made no sound. The wind was still blowing. I could feel it on my face, but it made no sound. My own heartbeat, which had been pounding in my ears, made no sound. It was the silence of eternity, the silence of the throne room, the silence that exists before God speaks creation into being. And then he was there. But this time he wasn't alone. Jesus stood in the center of the platform. But surrounding him, filling every available space, were beings of light. Angels, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Their forms shifting and shimmering like heat waves. Their presence so powerful that I fell to my knees without thinking. Some had wings massive, impossible wings that seemed to be made of living fire. Others appeared almost human, but with an intensity to their features that made it clear they were anything but. And all of them, every single one, was focused on Jesus, with an attention so complete, so absolute that I understood in that moment what true worship looked like. Jesus looked different tonight, too. He was still recognizable, still the same face I'd seen the previous 2 nights. But there was a glory emanating from him that I hadn't witnessed before. His robe seemed to be woven from light itself, and his eyes were like flames, burning with an intensity that should have terrified me, but instead filled me with a strange mixture of fear and overwhelming love. When he spoke, his voice wasn't just sound, it was power. It was authority. It was the voice that spoke galaxies into existence, and it made every cell in my body vibrate with recognition. "Jonathan, son of man, stand on your feet. I have something to show you that will shake everything you think you understand about the next 7 days." I struggled to stand, my legs weak, my whole body trembling. One of the angels, a massive being with eyes that seemed to see through me, reached out and touched my arm, and strength flooded into me. I stood facing Jesus, surrounded by these beings of light, and waited. "For 2 nights I've been preparing you," Jesus said, his voice echoing strangely in the supernatural silence. "I've been showing you that people have been marked. I've been showing you that doors have already been opened. I've been showing you that obedience is the key. But tonight, I need to show you something harder, something that will offend the comfortable but ignite the hungry." He gestured, and the mist from the waterfall began to swirl and coalesce, forming shapes, images, scenes that played out before my eyes like a movie projected onto fog. I saw a church, a large, beautiful church with stained glass windows and comfortable pews, and a congregation that looked peaceful, content, satisfied. The worship was polished. The sermon was encouraging. The people were smiling. Everything looked perfect. But then the image shifted, and I saw the same church from a different perspective. A spiritual perspective. And what I saw made my stomach turn. The building was surrounded by a thick dark fog. Not the clean mist of the waterfall, but something oily, something toxic. Something that clung to the walls and seeped through the windows. And inside, most of the people, not all, but most, had a gray film covering their eyes, their ears, their mouths. They were going through the motions of worship, but they couldn't see. They couldn't hear. They couldn't speak truth. "This is what I'm dealing with," Jesus said, and there was anguish in his voice. "This is why the next 7 days are so crucial. My church, not all of it, but much of it has been lulled to sleep by comfort. They've been blinded by religion. They've been deafened by tradition. They've been silenced by the fear of man." The scene shifted, and I saw individual people. Now a pastor standing in his office, feeling a strong prompting to preach a message about repentance, about holiness, about the cost of discipleship, but dismissing it because it might offend the donors. A worship leader sensing she should lead the congregation in extended worship, in waiting on God's presence, but cutting it short because the service was running long. A small group leader feeling convicted to address sin in someone's life, but staying silent to keep the peace. "These are my people," Jesus said, and I could hear tears in his voice, even though his face remained stern. "These are the ones who claim my name, who gather in my name, who sing songs about surrender and sacrifice." But when I actually asked them to surrender something, to sacrifice something, to obey something that cost them, they hesitate, they rationalize, they compromise. He turned to face me directly, and the intensity of his gaze made me want to look away, but I couldn't. The next 7 days are not just about personal breakthrough. Jonathan, they're about separation. I'm separating the sheep from the goats. I'm separating the wheat from the chaff. I'm separating those who truly love me from those who just love the idea of me. One of the angels stepped forward. A being so tall his head nearly reached the canopy above us and spoke in a voice like thunder. The marked ones are being called out of comfort, called out of compromise, called out of lukewarm Christianity. What the Lord is about to do will require vessels who are fully surrendered, fully obedient, fully abandoned to his will. The mist shifted again, and now I saw a different scene. I saw people, the marked ones, being presented with choices, specific concrete choices that would reveal what was truly in their hearts. I saw a businessman being prompted to give a large sum of money to someone in need, money he'd been saving for a vacation. In one scenario, he obeyed immediately, and I watched as that act of obedience opened a door to a business opportunity that multiplied his resources tenfold. In another scenario, he hesitated, rationalized, decided to give a smaller amount, and the door closed. I saw a woman being prompted to forgive someone who had deeply wounded her, to not just say the words, but to actually release the offense and reach out in reconciliation. In one scenario, she obeyed despite the pain, and I watched as years of physical illness left her body the moment she made the phone call. In another scenario, she held on to her right to be hurt, and the illness remained. I saw a young man being prompted to quit a job that was compromising his integrity to walk away from financial security and trust God to provide. In one scenario, he obeyed, and within 3 days, he was offered a position that paid more and aligned with his calling. In another scenario, he stayed, and I watched as his spiritual life slowly died over the following months. This is what the next 7 days are going to look like for the marked ones. Jesus said, his voice cutting through the visions. I'm going to be asking them to do hard things, uncomfortable things, costly things, things that don't make sense to their natural mind, things that will require them to trust me more than they trust their own understanding. He paused, and the angels around him seemed to lean in, as if what he was about to say next was of critical importance. And here's the truth that's going to separate those who truly want breakthrough from those who just want comfort. The breakthrough is on the other side of the obedience, not before it, not during it, after it. They have to step out in faith before they see the result. They have to obey before they understand why. They have to surrender before they receive. The mist swirled again, and this time I saw something that made my blood run cold. I saw people, marked people, people who had seen these messages, people who had felt the promptings, choosing comfort over obedience. And I watched as their marks began to fade, not disappear entirely, but dim like a light being turned down. And as their marks dimmed, I saw the angels who had been assigned to them step back, their faces filled with sorrow. Can they lose their marking? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Jesus' expression was grave. They can't lose their salvation if they're truly mine, but they can miss their moment. They can forfeit their assignment. They can disqualify themselves from the specific purpose I marked them for in this season. He stepped closer to me, and I could feel the heat of his presence driving away the cold. Jonathan, I need you to understand something. I need everyone watching this to understand something. I'm not playing games. I'm not testing people for my own amusement. I'm preparing an army. I'm raising up a generation of believers who will do greater works than these, just like I promised. But I can't use people who won't obey. I can entrust my power to people who will compromise when things get difficult. Another angel spoke, this one with a voice like rushing water. The days ahead are dark, darker than most realize. The enemy is mobilizing his forces for a final assault on truth, on righteousness, on the very concept of absolute morality. The Lord needs warriors, not spectators. He needs voices, not echoes. He needs people who will stand when everyone else sits, who will speak when everyone else is silent, who will obey when everyone else compromises. The visions in the mist intensified, coming faster now, showing me scene after scene of what was coming. I saw persecution, not the violent kind, not yet, but the subtle kind, the kind where speaking biblical truth costs you your job, your reputation, your relationships. I saw deception spreading through the church like a virus, false teachers gaining massive platforms while true prophets were silenced. I saw families torn apart not by external forces, but by internal compromise. But then I saw something else. I saw the marked ones, the ones who had obeyed in these 7 days, standing firm in the midst of the chaos. I saw them operating in supernatural power, healing the sick, casting out demons, speaking words of knowledge that cut through deception like a sword. I saw them leading others to Christ, not through clever arguments, but through the undeniable evidence of transformed lives. I saw them forming communities of believers, who actually lived like the early church, sharing everything, meeting daily, devoted to prayer and the apostles' teaching. This is what's at stake, Jesus said, his voice rising with passion. This is why these 7 days matter so much. I'm not just offering personal breakthrough. I'm offering the opportunity to be part of something bigger than yourself. I'm offering the chance to be a history maker, a world changer, a carrier of my glory in the darkest hour. He raised his hand, and the waterfall behind him suddenly erupted with light. The water turning into what looked like liquid, gold cascading down with a sound that was now audible again. A sound like 10,000 voices singing in perfect harmony. But here's what I need them to know, he continued, his voice somehow carrying over the sound of the waterfall. Here's the warning I need you to deliver. If they ignore the prompting in these 7 days, if they choose comfort over obedience, if they let fear or pride or rationalization keep them from doing what I'm asking, they won't just miss their personal breakthrough. They'll miss their preparation for what's coming. And when the dark days arrive, and they will arrive, they'll find themselves unprepared, untested, unable to stand. The temperature was rising now, the cold giving way to warmth, and I realized we were approaching the climax of this encounter. The angels were moving, forming a circle around Jesus and me, their wings creating a canopy of light above us. Jesus placed his hand on my chest, right over my heart, and I felt something like electricity surge through my entire body. I'm marking you again, Jonathan. You're marking you for this specific assignment. You're going to face opposition for sharing these messages. People are going to call you crazy, delusional, a false prophet. Religious leaders are going to dismiss you. Some of your friends are going to distance themselves from you. But you need to know that every word I've spoken to you is true, and every person who needs to hear it will hear it. He removed his hand, and I could still feel the warmth where he'd touched me like a brand, like a seal. And I'm doing the same thing for everyone who's watching this, everyone who's made it this far, everyone who's still hungry, everyone who's willing to pay the price. I'm marking them again, confirming their calling, sealing them for the assignment ahead. The angels began to sing, not in any language I recognized, but in a language that bypassed my mind and spoke directly to my spirit. And as they sang, the mist from the waterfall began to glow with different colors. Gold, silver, blue, purple, swirling around us in patterns that looked like words written in light. Tomorrow is the last time I'll meet you here, Jesus said, his voice somehow intimate despite the angelic chorus. Tomorrow I'll give you the practical instructions they need to follow. But tonight, I needed them to understand the stakes. I needed them to see what they're being prepared for. I needed them to count the cost. He gestured to the waterfall now blazing with supernatural light. Do you see this water, Jonathan? It doesn't flow upward. It doesn't flow sideways. It flows in the direction I designed it to flow. Regardless of obstacles, regardless of resistance. It simply obeys the laws I built into creation. That's what I'm looking for in these next 7 days. people who will flow in the direction I'm leading them, regardless of obstacles, regardless of resistance, simply because I am the one leading. The light was becoming almost unbearable now, so bright I had to squint. The angel's song was reaching a crescendo, and Jesus was beginning to fade, his form becoming translucent, merging with the light. "Tell them this," he said, his voice echoing as if from a great distance. "Tell them that the next 7 days will be the hardest and the most rewarding of their lives. Tell them that every act of obedience, no matter how small it seems, is being recorded in heaven. Tell them that angels are watching, waiting to move on their behalf the moment they step out in faith. Tell them that I'm not asking them to be perfect. I'm asking them to be willing." He was almost completely gone now, just a silhouette of light in the midst of the blazing waterfall. But his final words rang out clear and strong. "And tell them that I love them too much to let them stay comfortable. I love them too much to let them miss this. I love them too much to let them settle for a mediocre Christian life when I've called them to be world changers. The next 7 days begin now, and I'm watching to see who will obey." And then he was gone. The angels were gone. The supernatural light faded, leaving only the normal glow of starlight on mist. The temperature returned to its natural cold. The sounds of the rainforest came rushing back. But I was not the same. I stood there on that platform, my hand pressed against my chest where Jesus had touched me, feeling the warmth still radiating from that spot, and I wept. Not tears of sadness, but tears of holy fear and overwhelming love and desperate determination to be faithful to what I'd been shown. I don't know how long I stood there. It might have been minutes. It might have been an hour. Time felt strange, elastic, like I was caught between two worlds. Eventually, I made my way back down the trail, my flashlight beam seeming dim and inadequate after the glory I'd witnessed. And with every step, I felt the weight of what I'd been entrusted to share pressing down on me. Listen to me. If you're still watching this, if you've made it through all 3 nights of these encounters, you need to understand something. This is not entertainment. This is not motivational content. This is a prophetic warning from the throne room of heaven, delivered to someone who never asked for this assignment, but who's willing to be faithful to it regardless of the cost. You've been marked. You've been called. You've been chosen for such a time as this. But marking isn't enough. Calling isn't enough. Even choosing isn't enough. You have to respond. You have to obey. You have to be willing to do the hard things, the uncomfortable things, the costly things that Jesus is going to ask of you in the next 7 days. And make no mistake, he will ask. He's already asking that prompting you felt while watching this video. That conviction that stirred in your spirit. That uncomfortable awareness of something you need to do, someone you need to forgive, something you need to surrender. That's him. That's his voice. That's your first test. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to rationalize it away? Are you going to decide to deal with it later? Are you going to let fear or pride or comfort keep you from obeying? Or are you going to be like the waterfall, simply flowing in the direction he's designed you to flow, regardless of obstacles, regardless of resistance? The next 7 days are going to reveal what's really in your heart. They're going to separate the sheep from the goats, the wheat from the chaff, the truly surrendered from the merely religious. And I'm telling you right now, as someone who stood in the presence of Jesus 3 nights in a row, as someone who's seen the angels and heard their songs and witnessed the glory, it's worth it. Whatever he asks you to do, whatever he asks you to surrender, whatever he asks you to sacrifice, it's worth it. The breakthrough is on the other side of the obedience. Tomorrow night, I'm going back to that waterfall one final time. Jesus said he's going to give me the practical instructions, the specific steps you need to take. But don't wait for tomorrow to start obeying. Start now. Start with whatever he's already shown you. Leave your commitment in the comments. Tell me what you're going to do in the next 7 days. Tell me what you're surrendering, what you're obeying, what you're stepping into, because I believe that public declaration of obedience releases supernatural power. You've been marked. You've been warned. You've been prepared. Now, it was February 5th, 2026 at 3:33 a.m. And yes, I noticed the numbers when I made what I knew would be my final climb to the waterfall overlook. But this time, Everything was different from the very beginning. The moment I stepped onto the trail, I felt it. A sense of completion, of culmination, like I was walking toward the final scene of a divine drama that had been written before time began. The rainforest seemed to know it too. The usual sounds of nocturnal creatures were replaced by an almost reverent silence, broken only by the distant thunder of the waterfall and the sound of my own breathing. The air temperature had risen to a comfortable 62 degrees, and there was a sweetness to it, like jasmine and honeysuckle, though neither of those flowers grew in this region. The previous day had been the most intense of my life. After sharing the third encounter, the response had been overwhelming. Hundreds of thousands of comments from people all over the world, sharing their commitments, their decisions to obey, their testimonies of what had already begun to shift in their lives. People were forgiving decades-old offenses. People were giving sacrificially. People were quitting jobs that compromised their integrity. People were reaching out to estranged family members. People were stepping into callings they'd been running from for years. But there had also been the opposition Jesus had warned me about. The messages calling me a false prophet. The religious leaders condemning these videos as heretical. The former friends distancing themselves. The doubt that crept in during quiet moments, whispering that maybe I'd imagined it all. Maybe I was leading people astray. Maybe I should delete everything and go back to just being an actor. But then I'd feel that warmth on my chest where Jesus had touched me. And I'd know with a certainty that transcended logic, that every word he'd spoken was true. As I approached the overlook, I could see light ahead. Not the cold light of the moon or the distant light of stars, but warm golden light that seemed to be emanating from the waterfall itself. And I could hear something, music maybe, or singing, or something that was both and neither. A sound that made my heart race with anticipation. When I stepped onto the platform, I stopped and just stared. The waterfall was glowing, not reflecting light, but generating it, as if the water itself had been transformed into liquid light. The mist rising from the pool below was shot through with colors I'd never seen before. Colors that don't exist in the normal spectrum. Colors that seem to carry emotion and meaning beyond their visual beauty. And standing at the edge of the platform, his back to me, looking out at the cascade of light, was Jesus. He was alone this time, no angels, no supernatural manifestations, just him in simple robes, looking almost ordinary except for the way the light from the waterfall seemed to recognize him, seemed to bend toward him, seemed to worship him. "Jonathan," he said without turning around, "come stand beside me." I did, my legs steady this time, my heart calm, despite the supernatural nature of what I was witnessing. I'd been in his presence 3 nights in a row now, and while the awe never diminished, the fear had transformed into something else. Into trust, into intimacy, into the kind of relationship where you can stand beside someone in comfortable silence and know you're exactly where you're supposed to be. We stood there together for a long moment just watching the waterfall, and I realized he was giving me time to absorb the beauty of it, to let it minister to something deep in my soul that had been depleted by the intensity of the previous days. Finally, he spoke. "Do you know why I chose a waterfall for these encounters?" I shook my head. Why, because a waterfall represents constant motion, constant flow, constant surrender to gravity and design. The water doesn't cling to the rocks at the top. It doesn't try to hold on to where it's been. It simply releases and falls and trusts that there's a purpose in the descent. He turned to look at me, and his eyes were gentle, filled with a tenderness that made my throat tight. That's what I'm asking of my marked ones in these next 7 days. Not perfection, not complete understanding, just constant surrender, just constant flow, just constant trust that I know where they're going, even when they can't see it. He gestured for me to sit, and we both settled onto the wooden platform, our legs dangling over the edge like 2 friends sitting on a dock watching the sunset. It was so normal, so human, and yet so profound that I felt tears starting to form. "I've shown you the marking," he said, his voice conversational, now intimate. "I've shown you the open doors. I've shown you the stakes. But tonight, I need to give you something practical, something concrete, something that everyone watching can actually do. starting right now, that will position them to receive everything I want to give them in these 7 days. He reached down and picked up a small stone from the platform, turning it over in his hands. It's going to sound too simple. The religious people are going to dismiss it as reductive. The intellectual people are going to think it's beneath them. But the hungry people, the truly marked ones, they're going to recognize the wisdom in it. And they're going to do it, and their lives are going to change. He handed me the stone. It was smooth, worn by water, and still slightly damp. For the next 7 days, starting from the moment they finish watching this video, I want everyone who's been marked to do something for 30 minutes every single day. Not 29 minutes, not 31 minutes. Exactly 30 minutes. And here's what I want them to do. He held up one finger. First, 10 minutes of silence, complete silence. No music, no podcasts, no audiobooks, no distractions. Just them and me in a quiet space. And during those 10 minutes, I want them to do only one thing. Listen. Not pray, not read, not worship. Just listen. Because I've been speaking to them for years, but they've been too busy, too distracted, too surrounded by noise to hear me. He held up a second finger. Second, 10 minutes of writing. I want them to take a pen and paper, not a phone, not a computer, but actual pen and actual paper. And I want them to write down everything they hear during those first 10 minutes. Every thought, every impression, every prompting, every conviction, even if it seems random, even if it doesn't make sense, even if they're not sure if it's me or just their own thoughts, write it all down. He held up a third finger, 10 minutes of obedience. I want them to look at what they wrote and identify one thing, just one thing that they can do that day in response to what they heard. And then I want them to do it before the day is over. No excuses, no delays, no rationalization, just simple, immediate obedience. He lowered his hand and looked at me intently. That's it. That's the practical instruction. 30 minutes a day for 7 days, 10 minutes listening, 10 minutes writing, 10 minutes obeying. And I promise you, Jonathan, I promise everyone watching this that if they do this faithfully for 7 days, their lives will never be the same. I turned the stone over in my hands, feeling its smoothness, its solidity. That does sound simple, I said, almost too simple. He smiled. That's exactly the point. I'm not looking for people who can do complicated things. I'm looking for people who will do simple things consistently. Do you know how many people pray for breakthrough, but won't commit to 30 minutes a day for 7 days? Do you know how many people say they want to hear my voice, but won't sit in silence for 10 minutes? Do you know how many people claim they want to be used by me, but won't obey the small prompting I give them? He stood up and I stood with him, still holding the stone. This is the test, Jonathan. This 30-minute daily practice for 7 days is going to separate the truly marked from the merely curious, because it's going to require discipline. It's going to require sacrifice. Sacrifice of sleep, sacrifice of entertainment, sacrifice of comfort. It's going to require humility. The humility to admit they don't already know everything. The humility to sit in silence and wait. The humility to obey even when the instruction seems small or strange. The light from the waterfall was intensifying now, and I could see the dawn beginning to break through the canopy above us. The first rays of sunlight mixing with the supernatural glow to create something breathtakingly beautiful. But here's what's going to happen for those who do it. Jesus continued, his voice taking on that tone of authority I'd come to recognize. On day 1, they're going to struggle with the silence. Their minds are going to race. They're going to feel like they're not hearing anything. They're going to want to quit. But if they push through by day 2 or 3, they're going to start hearing my voice with a clarity they've never experienced before. He began walking along the edge of the platform, and I followed, the stone still in my hand. By day 4 or 5, the things they're writing down are going to start connecting, forming patterns, revealing a bigger picture of what I'm doing in their lives. And by day 6 or 7, the acts of obedience they've been doing, the small, seemingly insignificant acts, are going to start producing fruit. Doors are going to open. Relationships are going to heal. Provision is going to come. Breakthrough is going to manifest. He stopped and turned to face me, the rising sun now creating a halo effect around his head. But I need you to warn them about something. I need you to tell them that the enemy is going to fight this harder than anything else. Because he knows that if they establish this practice, if they learn to hear my voice clearly and obey immediately, they're going to become dangerous. They're going to become the kind of believers who actually change the world. What kind of opposition should they expect? I ask. His expression became serious. Everything is going to conspire to keep them from those 30 minutes. They're going to oversleep. They're going to have emergencies. They're going to have family members interrupt them. They're going to feel too tired, too busy, too distracted. The enemy is going to whisper that it's not working, that they're not hearing anything, that this is a waste of time. And if they give in to any of that, if they miss even one day, they need to start over. All 7 days. Because this isn't about completing a task. It's about establishing a pattern, the building a foundation, creating a lifestyle of listening and obeying. He reached out and took the stone from my hand, then threw it into the waterfall. It disappeared into the cascade of light. And I heard a sound like a bell ringing, pure and clear. That stone represented their old life. Their old patterns, their old way of relating to me, sporadic, inconsistent, based on emotion rather than discipline. I just threw it into the waterfall, into the constant flow of my presence. And that's what's going to happen to everyone who commits to these 7 days. Their old life is going to be washed away, and they're going to emerge as new creations, established in a rhythm of intimacy with me that will sustain them through everything that's coming. The sun was fully rising now, and the supernatural glow of the waterfall was beginning to fade, merging with the natural light of dawn. The colors in the mist were softening, becoming the normal rainbow effect of sunlight on water vapor. And I realized that this encounter was coming to an end, that this was the last time I would meet Jesus here in this way. He seemed to sense my thoughts. This is the last time I'll meet you at this waterfall, Jonathan. But it's not the last time I'll speak to you. It's not the last time I'll guide you. It's not the last time I'll use you. This was just the beginning of a new season, a new assignment, a new level of intimacy between us. He placed both hands on my shoulders just as he had on the third night. And I felt that same warmth, that same electricity, that same sense of being marked and sealed and set apart. You've been faithful to share what I've shown you, even when it cost you, even when people mocked you, even when you doubted yourself. And because of your faithfulness, thousands of people, maybe millions, are going to step into their destiny in these next 7 days. Tears were streaming down my face now, and I didn't try to stop them. What if I fail you? I whispered. What if I mess this up? His smile was radiant, full of love and confidence. You won't, because it's not about your strength, it's about mine. It's not about your ability, it's about your availability. And you've made yourself available, Jonathan. That's all I've ever asked. He released my shoulders and stepped back, and I could see that he was beginning to fade, becoming translucent in the morning light. Tell them one more thing, he said, his voice echoing as if from a distance. Tell them that I'm proud of them. Tell them that heaven is cheering for them. Tell them that angels have been assigned to help them, to protect them, to guide them through these 7 days. Tell them that they're not alone in this. Tell them that I'm with them every step of the way. He was almost completely gone now, just a shimmer in the air, a presence more felt than seen. But his final words rang out clear and strong. The 7 days begin now, and I'm watching to see who will be faithful. Tell them I love them. Tell them I believe in them. Tell them that their future is brighter than they can possibly imagine if they'll just trust me and obey. Tell them. And then he was gone. I stood there on the platform as the sun continued to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold and orange. And I felt a peace settle over me that I'd never experienced before. Not the peace of having all the answers, but the peace of knowing I'd been faithful to deliver the message I'd been given. I stayed at the waterfall for another hour, just sitting on the platform, watching the waterfall in its endless cascade, thinking about everything I'd witnessed over the past 4 nights. And as I sat there, I began to understand something profound. The waterfall had been the perfect setting for these encounters because it represented exactly what Jesus was asking of his marked ones. Constant flow, constant surrender, constant trust in the design and purpose of the Creator. The water didn't question why it had to fall. It didn't resist the pull of gravity. It didn't try to hold on to where it had been. It simply flowed constantly, consistently, beautifully, fulfilling the purpose it was created for. And that's what these 7 days were about. Not about striving or struggling or trying to earn God's favor. Just about flowing, just about surrendering, just about trusting that He knows where we're going even when we can't see it. When I finally made my way back down the trail, the rainforest was fully awake. Birds were singing, insects were buzzing. The temperature had risen to a comfortable 70 degrees. Everything looked normal, ordinary, like any other morning. But I knew that nothing would ever be ordinary again. Not for me, and not for anyone who had been marked and who chose to respond. Now, let me speak directly to you. If you've watched all 4 parts of this message, if you've made it all the way to this moment, you need to understand something. You didn't find this video by accident. The algorithm didn't bring you here. Your curiosity didn't bring you here. God Himself orchestrated this divine appointment because you've been marked for such a time as this. And now you have a choice to make. You can dismiss everything you've heard. You can write it off as the ramblings of an actor who spent too much time playing Jesus on screen. You can go back to your comfortable, lukewarm Christian life and pretend this moment never happened. Or you can respond. You can commit to the 30-minute daily practice for the next 7 days. You can position yourself to receive everything God wants to give you. You can step into the calling and destiny you've been marked for since before the foundation of the world. Here's exactly what I need you to do. First, right now, before you do anything else, leave a comment below saying, "I commit." That's it. Just those 2 words. Because there's power in public declaration. There's accountability in making your commitment known. And I believe that the moment you type those words and hit send, angels are going to be dispatched on your behalf. Second, decide right now what time you're going to do your 30 minutes tomorrow. Not sometime tomorrow, not when I have time, a specific time. Set an alarm. Put it in your calendar. Treat it like the most important appointment of your day because it is. Third, prepare your space. Find a quiet place where you won't be interrupted. Get a pen and a notebook. Again, not your phone, not your computer, but actual pen and actual paper. Put them in the space where you're going to meet with God so everything is ready. Fourth, tell someone. Tell a friend. Tell a family member. Tell someone in your church. Tell them what you're committing to and ask them to hold you accountable, because the enemy is going to try to stop you. And having someone checking in on you can make all the difference. Fifth, prepare for opposition. I'm not trying to scare you, but I need you to be realistic. The next 7 days are going to be hard. You're going to face obstacles. You're going to feel resistance. You're going to want to quit. But every time you feel that resistance, I want you to recognize it for what it is. Confirmation that you're doing something that matters, something that threatens the kingdom of darkness, something that's going to change your life. Now, here's the deadline. You need to start this practice within the next 24 hours, not next week, not when things calm down. Within 24 hours of watching this video, because the window Jesus showed me is open right now, but it won't stay open forever. This is a Kairos moment, a divine timing, a supernatural opportunity that has an expiration date. And that expiration date is March 7th, 2026, exactly 30 days from when I had the first encounter. After that date, the window closes, the opportunity passes. The marking remains, but the specific breakthrough available in this season will have to wait for another time. I know that sounds harsh. I know it sounds like I'm trying to manipulate you with urgency. But I'm just telling you what Jesus showed me. I'm just being faithful to deliver the message I was given, even though I know some people are going to be offended by it. Let me share something personal with you. Since I started sharing these encounters, my life has changed dramatically. Some of the changes have been beautiful. The testimonies flooding in, the lives being transformed, the sense of being used by God in a way I never imagined. But some of the changes have been painful. I've lost friends. I faced criticism from people I respected. I've had moments of doubt and fear and wondering if I made a huge mistake by sharing any of this. But then I remember standing on that platform at 30:33 a.m., feeling Jesus' hands on my shoulders, hearing him say that he's proud of me, that he believes in me, that my faithfulness is going to help thousands of people step into their destiny. And I know with a certainty that transcends logic that it's all worth it. And I'm telling you right now, whatever Jesus asks you to do in these next 7 days, whatever he asks you to surrender, whatever he asks you to sacrifice, it's going to be worth it. The breakthrough is real. The open doors are real. The marking is real. And the opportunity to step into everything God has for you is real. But you have to respond. You have to commit. You have to do the work. So here's my challenge to you. Commit to the 30 minutes a day for 7 days. 10 minutes listening, 10 minutes writing, 10 minutes obeying, starting within the next 24 hours. And then after the 7 days are complete, come back to this video and leave a testimony. Tell me what happened. Tell me what you heard. Tell me what doors opened. Tell me how your life changed. Because I believe with everything in me that 30 days from now, the comment section of this video is going to be filled with testimonies of miracles, of breakthroughs, answered prayers, of transformed lives. And those testimonies are going to encourage others who are just finding this message, who are just discovering they've been marked, who are just beginning their own 7-day journey. You've been marked, you've been called, you've been chosen. Now it's time to respond. The waterfall keeps flowing constantly, consistently, fulfilling its purpose without question or hesitation. And that's what Jesus is asking of you in these next 7 days. Just flow. Just surrender. Just trust. Just obey and watch what he does. I'm praying for you right now. I'm praying that you'll have the courage to commit. I'm praying that you'll have the discipline to follow through. I'm praying that you'll have the faith to believe that God really does have something incredible planned for your life. The next 7 days begin now. Don't miss this. Don't let fear, doubt, or busyness, or comfort rob you of the breakthrough that's waiting for you. You've been marked for such a time as this. Now step into it. As I sit here now recording these final words, I can still feel the warmth on my chest where Jesus touched me. I can still see the waterfall glowing with supernatural light. I can still hear